Okay, so last time we learned about local storage, and in this video we're going to learn about session storage. This is really short, but I'm also going to give you an example where we'll start storing a user in both local and session storage using our DOM. Until now we just stored by directly typing in something, but we also want to use the DOM, so this is why you have this example right here, which you can download. And yeah, we're going to use this to code our storage for both local and session storage. So let's first of all end this, type in here comment, this is the end, and let's type in another comment, session storage. Okay, so as I said, session storage has basically all the attributes and functions as local storage. But the session storage object is used actually less often, and just because it's much limited. As you know, if you refresh the page, then it's gone. So now if I refresh, but if I close and open up a new page, then the information is gone. If I refresh it stays there, but well, that isn't much helpful. So let me store something in local storage. So we have this stored in our session storage, and let's go into local storage. You can just ignore this is automatically in there. Let's just clear everything and store something in here. So exactly as we stored with a local storage, we'll now type in session storage and then dot set item, so it's exactly like local storage, and then we will set a key of test and a value of, let's say, first. Okay, so if I hit save, then this is stored within session storage. Up here, test first. And let's store another one, test, say 2. And we'll store within here. Let's store now an array of 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's hit save. Now we have this also stored in session storage. If we take a look in local storage, there's nothing else excepting our old storage stored, because we only stored in session storage. Now, as I said, we're not going to use this method to store items. We want to store using JSON. So when we're storing something, we'll type in session storage, and let's say user 1, like this. And now we'll store using JSON.stringify, and we'll store an object of name and Norbert. Okay, so let's hit save, and as you can see, user1 is stored with the name of Norbert, and when we want to extract this, say we want to alert, for example, alert, so it pumps up in our browser, session storage.getItem, and we want to get it back. Actually, let me get back first of all this, because this will only return me this item. So let's say test get item, the key of test. Oh, not you. And let's hit save, and it alerts our first test. Okay, if I want to get back our second test and hit save, this is 1, 2, 3 will be return. But now if I want to return this one, so return that object, as you can remember, if I would return now user 1 instead of this, then it will return me the object, but I don't want this. So let's just go down here. I want to return a variable of user. I want to return the user 2. Actually user 1 it was. And now let's assign it to json.parse. And we'll return a parse data from the session storage of the user 1. There we go. So now let's comment first of all this out. And now let's alert our user 1. And this will return the object, And now if I want the name, then it will return Norbert. Okay, so that's pretty much simple. I think it's time to give an example. Let's close this one up. And it's time to use our DOM here to store something and return it. So how can I make this so you both can see, can really see everything? I'm gonna make this larger and also jump between this right here. So make this also larger, inspect and go to our application and go to our both storages open, and let's actually clear them. Let's delete everything that is in the storage. Let's hit a refresh. Oh, this is getting stored. So let's jump back into our project and let's start commenting everything out. This, and also this. So nothing interferes with what we're going to do. So we have everything commented out, and just going to type in here example. Let's say local and session storage. Okay, and let's also create this as a comment. Or let's create it as a string. There we go. Okay. Now, let's take a look in our HTML. I could actually put it like this. Let's take a look in our HTML. We will use this user input ID. So we want to grab onto this. How do we grab onto an ID? Well, go to document dot get element by ID, or use query selector. I would much rather prefer to use query selector. And now let's go and grab onto the ID of user input. Now I'm going to add directly here a event listener, and we're going to listen for a submit. Okay, so when we submit, okay, you can see here this user input is actually a form. Okay, we're inputting something in this form, and when we're submitting it, then use a function which will have an event of e, and first I'm going to prevent the default of any form which will try to submit something by typing e dot prevent default. So this will prevent, this is actually a built-in function, this will prevent the default of our form which will try to submit it to wherever. We don't want to submit it anywhere, we just want to store it. So we want to store a user. So let's create a const. Let's name it user. And now let's set it, let's grab on to the document dot query selector. We're going to grab on to the user name here. Okay, so this input space, let me just jump in here. So this input right here is actually this one, which has the ID of username. So let's grab onto it, hash username, and they should be within quotes. Okay, and we don't want to grab onto the username, so if I would go here, console log the user, and let's jump back in here, go to the console, let's execute our code, and hey, why don't you grab onto the user? Okay, so it's grabbing as soon as I hit add user, is grabbing onto, well, to the input. We don't want that, we want to grab onto the value. Okay, so now if I hit save, go back in here and type in Norbert. Okay, now it's grabbing onto the value. Great. Now next up, let me comment this out. Until now, actually, we just added one item to storage. But if you want to add multiple items, we need to create an array and loop through them. Okay, so we can just add one each time because it will overwrite it. Now, let's just first add one item to the session and local storage. So session storage So we're going to add it to the session storage. Dot set item, and let's say we're going to set a user and with the name of user. Now when this is added, we're going to alert stored to session storage. Stored. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing for local storage. And this will be local storage. Okay, so let's hit save. And let's jump to our project again and let's add here Norbert. Store to session storage, store to local storage. Now let's take a look at our storage. And there we go. It's added to local storage and it's added to session storage. Actually, I want to delete this and add it again. Session, local, and there we go. Norbert is stored in both of them. Now if we would add Laura, let's click on this again. As you can see, in both instances, Laura is replaced. And actually, to demonstrate this, let me copy this, open it up in a new tab. So just copy the IP address, and let's see, inspect, go to application, and let's see. Laura is no longer here Laura is on our local storage, but Laura is no longer in our session storage. So if I add here Arabella again, and let's hit save, not save but add it, click on the add button, Arabella is replaced, so Laura is replaced in our local storage, and in our session storage, Arabella is now added. Okay, so that was what I meant with, well, actually this is a pretty good example to see that local storage does not, session storage does not store after the refresh, after the browser, after a new tab or the browser is closed or reset. Now let's go back to our code, and I'm just going to initiate here a users variable. Okay, create it, initiate it, and we are now going to use an if statement. This if statement will first of all look in the storage. So if session storage dot get item, actually, let me go down here. So if in session storage we're going to look for item, we're going to look for users. So these users that we just created. And if this users does not exist, so it's null, or local storage dot get item users is also null, so it also doesn't exist. And don't forget, this is the type. And did I delete here something? Yeah, I think I just deleted something. Yep. So both session storage and local storage are empty. Then we're going to return a users with an empty array. Okay, but if it's not empty, else. So if there's something in local or session storage, then we want to extract the information by assigning it to the user. But because we can only store strings, we want to return it using JSON and parse it. So this is why I told you about JSON, how we can parse and use JSON by parsing and stringifying. Okay, so then else users with an S at the end, JSON dot parse. We're going to use JSON method, and we're going to use parse to parse the session storage dot get item. We're going to get the users, and we also want to return, where's my end? There you are. We also want to return from the session storage get item, actually not for the session storage, we want to return from the local storage. For the type in here session local. Oh Jesus. So local storage dot get item, and again we want to get our users. Now in order to put something in there, I'm going to use users, or variable that we created up there, and I'm going to use the push method because it is an array. So push, and we want to push a user. Okay, so local storage, first we're going to push to, it doesn't matter, local or session storage. We want to use set item now, and we're going to set to the users, but using JSON.stringify whatever we put in our users, in our variable. Okay, and this is the same thing also for session storage. Okay, so let's try this out. So if I would type in here, actually we need to comment this part out. We don't need this anymore. We only need this, exactly. Let's hit save, go back here, and actually let me delete everything. So let's refresh again, everything is empty. Yep, so let's store Norbert. Yep, Norbert has been stored to both session and local storage, and as you can see, now it is in an array. So if I want to store now Laura, it's no longer overwritten, but it's stored to the users. So we have two users, Norbert and Laura. And also in our session storage, we have the two users, Laura and Norbert. And if I want, I could put in another user, Arabella, hit enter, and Arabella is now stored both in both storage places, local and session storage. Oh, even if I hit refresh, the users are still there. And if I copy this and you open it in a new tab, inspect, and let's go to applications, let's go to session storage. Session storage is empty, and if you take a look in local storage, you can see we have our 3 users in here. And for example, if I want now to let's say down here, go back in our program, and let's say we want to extract something from it. Let's say alert from our users, and we want to alert, how do I store this as alert the users. Okay, now let's go back in to our project, and we have an error. If I store something, it's overwritten. Because we is not defined. Exactly, because I was outside the function. I want to use this in here. Okay, so let's try this again. Norbert, edit, and undefined. Why is that? Application. I'm still adding Norbert. Actually, I wanted to return it in a console. Because I should do. So let's say console log, and want to return our users. And that's it. If I add something, yeah, there it is. Okay, so later on we'll create a project. Actually, after this, we'll create a project when we're going to store real users. It's kind of a real life application. We're going to store a user with his email address, with his birthday, with everything on it. So fun times ahead again. Woo! Next project. Okay guys, so see you in the next one. Bye bye.